We're so excited, everybody, because Spark is back for a limited run engagement in November.
Yeah, we are so excited. We had a great run in July. We heard from a lot of people that they want more. So we are happy to let you know that we've added 3 shows, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The performances will take place in Norwalk, Connecticut at an amazing venue. It's the personal studio and performance venue of an incredible artist named Five Fingers. And the venue is called the Art Monster Studio. We will put the ticket link in our bio as well as on our website, woowoointherealworld.com. You won't want to miss this production, and we hope to see you there. My joy is her joy, is his joy, and our joy to share. Welcome back to Woo Woo in the Real World. And this is our wrap-up episode for this season. It's been a long time in the making here.
It has. It's very funny. I just got like a little emotional.
Right?
I did right when you said that. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, what is happening?
I know. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, so indicative of the year, right? Like, not even this season of episodes, but think about how we started this year, 2024. I remember it so vividly because it's an 8 year, right?
Yes.
And we started off talking about how, this is the year where like the energy is going to support any changes you need to make to live your authentic self, right?
Yeah.
And that stirred up a lot of stuff.
It really, really did. And yeah, I'm sitting here in my new house in Indiana, which
Yes,
is
you
like
are.
so wild because
So
when we started this year, that was not in my sights at all.
that's
Uh,
right.
so to end this year and to end this season sitting here is a little surreal to me in a good way, in a really good way, but just like in a really pointed way of saying, wow, if you stay open and like we said in last season and let the universe blow your mind, like it will blow your mind.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mind is a little blown.
Yeah. Because gosh, I mean, packing up and moving back to Indiana, while that's something that had always been kind of in the back of your mind as
Mm-hmm.
one day, someday, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, back to that like universal energy, it was like, oh no, no, you're ready now.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
that
we're
was
just
the
gonna give you this nudge to make it happen.
yeah. It's really crazy. I like to put a fine point on all of our woo woo ness, the how this house came about was completely serendipitous. It was not on the market. My sister, who's a
Mm,
real estate
right.
agent, ended up finding it for me because the people had taken it off the market to do some work. And she was just, looking to see what had been on the market. And I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to buy a house. But she's like, you know what? Let's just go look because where I landed in this cute little village just northwest of Indianapolis, the houses are really hard to find in the village. And everybody always said that. And I guess I didn't really appreciate it until I was at a cocktail party last night, not last night, Friday night, a couple nights ago, with people in the neighborhood. And everybody was talking about somebody had just bought a house a couple streets over. And they were like, well, it's just impossible to get a house in the village. And so it's like, I keep hearing that and so it was just wild how this house came, how my sister found it, how I thought I wasn't ready. But when I saw it, there was something about it. And I just said, yeah, this is it.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it's like I didn't have to fight with a market because it wasn't on the market. The owners were super happy to do a deal before they had to put it back on the market. So
Amazing.
it was amazing. They were really motivated. Like I ended up doing all this renovation. My sister was here to help me with it. It was like everything that could have been in on paper should have been like a major obstacle. They were all completely eliminated. Like none of them were. And
Yeah.
it's just really wild the glide path that this year has been with such heavy, big things that
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like I remember talking, maybe it was the last episode that we did, just about this idea of, surrendering and then trusting the process from there, right? And I think that's such like an amazing example of when you do this inner work, this woo-woo, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
do begin to surrender and trust and really know what alignment feels like. Like, what does alignment feel like in your body, right?
Yes.
And I think your physical body was probably also giving you all these cues, right? Like,
Yes.
trust it, like this feels right. It felt right in your body, which
Yes.
probably made it easier to trust it, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like we talked about that last season in season
Mhm.
3. It was about embodiment and how do you
Mhm.
embody this feeling. And that was a lot of work that I did last year about feeling and not thinking and processing stuff so much in my brain and actually feeling it in my body. And you're right, I may have totally missed it if I hadn't done that work in 23. I probably wouldn't have known when I walked into this house the feeling of peace and calm that I had when I came in. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is
Yeah,
it. Even though
yeah,
it was going to be so chaotic to get to this point,
right.
at every step, it just felt, my body felt calm and at home, at home. It was a very interesting experience.
Yeah. So let's just talk about that peace and calm for a second, shall we?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I mean, this was a big decision. You know,
Yeah.
you lived in our area of New York, right? For over 20 years, raising your kids, right?
Yeah.
And to feel peace and calm around the decision and around being there, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
There was no second guessing, there wasn't any like,
yeah.
sleepless nights over like, what have I done? What have I done?
Yeah.
It
I
just felt
never,
natural.
it did. It felt natural. And you're right. I never had a sleepless night where I was like, oh shit, like, oh my God, what did I do? I never had that moment. I wouldn't say that I never had like, doubt might not be the right word. It was just more of the final phase, and I guess like I really kind of want people to understand it's like the final phase of moving through of packing up New York.
Hmm.
Um, that was extremely difficult. Like it was harder than I expected it to be because everything had been such a glide path and everything did feel so aligned. And I mean, you read these things on Instagram all the time about like it can still feel hard and still be right. It can still be a heavy lift and still be the thing you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when you're living it, I mean, it was a real slog. And packing, I think I started packing in September. I mean, this is a house I've lived in for 20 years. Like you said, raising
Mhm.
my kids. I had to go through every single thing in that house and decide, is it going to my daughter's new apartment that she has in Boston? Is it going to my new house in Indiana? Is it staying in this house for the last little bit that's going to remain of it until it's sold? And I found myself shockingly unable to move my feet some days. Like I was just, and I literally had to say to myself out loud, just keep moving your feet. Just move your feet to that room that you have to go look at the things.
Mhm.
Just go sit in the room. Just go be in the. I mean, it was hard. And that
Yeah.
last week before the moving truck came, I finally had to call one of my friends, and I was like, "You just have to come and help me do this last bit because I can't push myself over this last hump." Um, and I feel like if you haven't done the work, you might read all of that and be like, "Oh my God, this is wrong. It shouldn't be this hard." But um, it's 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 still okay. Like it's
Yeah.
funny. Like in that last week, I found a letter that I wrote my dad who passed in 2019. So I found it in his drawer when we were packing up his things. But I put it in a safe and I found it when I was going through some things. I had written him when I moved to Washington from
Mhm.
Indiana. And the opening part of it said, um, like, of all the things that you've taught me, the line that sticks with me the most is, if you're sad when you leave, it just means you had a great time. It means it was meaningful, right?
Mhm.
And so I was saying then how sad I was to leave Indiana to go to DC, but that it still felt right, and it did.
Mhm.
And I just thought, here you go. Like you're just
Yeah.
given another little reminder and another little gift. Yeah, it's sad. It was sad to leave New York. I'm emotional right now talking about it. Like it was sad to leave
Yeah.
because it was meaningful.
Hmm.
It was
Totally.
meaningful.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
big, many chapters of your life there.
Yeah.
Uh, and what a way though to wrap it all up. Because in so many ways, everything that you had been working on, and then you launched your solo career, right?
Yeah.
And I think even for both of us, 2024 was our most creative years, where
Yes.
we just leaned into, what felt right to us and what we wanted to create, right?
Mhm.
And that's incredible, right?
Yeah.
Like you tied up all the business
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
totally, left on a high note. And obviously you're going to be coming back and forth. So it's,
Yes.
it's not a
Thank
for
goodness for that.
it's an easy back and forth. But yeah, and that's why I just keep thinking of, that theme through all these conversations that we've been having on the podcast and beyond. It's like there never really is a destination on this
Right.
journey, right? And, it's just processing and moving on to the next level, processing, moving on to the next level, working through stuff, then maybe getting triggered, working through it again, moving to the next level, right?
Yep. Yep. It's
Yeah.
that ascension spiral that people talk about. It's not a straight line, not a straight curve up. It's an ascension spiral. And sometimes I feel like you slip down the spiral a little bit, but
Then you got to work your way back up.
then you work your way back up. Yeah. But like in this season, we this whole season 4 about talking about spark. I mean, that was such a huge it still kind of blows my mind that that was this year. Like
It
in
does, right? I know.
how much that happened this year and like
Mhm.
the monumental just the monumentalness of spark and the fact that it came to life and it happened not once but twice.
I know. I know.
Like
It's mind blowing.
it has to blow your mind. Like when you sit back and look at this year, like how are you processing it?
Yeah, well, I feel, in many ways very similar to you that like it was a scary and it was a scary decision, right, to make, right? And then also I felt incredibly responsible because,
Yeah.
it's bringing other women into the mix who, the invitation is really to be as vulnerable and as real about something that's happened to you in your life as a way to be a bright light for somebody who might be sitting there in darkness, right?
Yep.
And I think just leaning into what I felt my heart was saying and where I wanted to take it, um, it really just became that trust and surrender moment, right? And
Yeah.
not really having an outcome in mind because a lot about spark in that process also kind of shifted and changed, and I really worked very hard to just give everybody their own space because it
Mm-hmm.
was their own story, their own piece, their own contribution, and I really wanted people to have the freedom to explore and play around with that and also bring their own intention into it, right?
Yeah.
And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I was like, wow. I mean, it was beautiful to see how it all came together. But I've been, much like, kind of going through your stuff, right? And unpacking. I've been unpacking. I have been doing a bit of that process myself, right?
Mhm.
And revisiting, notes or people who took the time to write an email or give a review about it. It's just so incredible
Mhm.
how it resonated and touched other people, which no one knows that, right? I'm sure it's like when you
Right.
write a song and somebody says, wow, that really touched me or that really spoke to me or, and that's a personal story of yours, right?
Yeah.
But they tend
Mhm.
to have these universal themes when we are very vulnerable and very real, like when we're coming from a real place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so for 2024, for me, it was just leaning into that in a big way and trusting it.
Yeah. Trusting it. And then, like you said, the surrender and the surrender and the surrender. It was like multiple
Mhm.
steps of surrender, especially when you didn't prescribe the outcome,
Yeah,
because at every step you have to have some structure, some idea, right, of what
yeah,
you're moving toward. Otherwise, you can't move a project like that forward.
right.
And then you have to also then have the moment of flexibility of saying, okay, uh, I'm going to surrender. Maybe this is going to look slightly different than what I thought at this juncture, or slightly different at
Mhm.
that juncture.
Yeah,
But it was such a overly powerful and moving experience in 24, the whole Spark experience. Um, and it was just so fun to talk to all of the ladies. Well, most of the ladies. I think we didn't get a couple of them on this podcast this season for scheduling reasons,
Yeah.
um, but it was great to have our debriefs with them this whole season and talk about what
Hmm.
it meant to them, and
Yeah.
to hear from people that were there and what it meant to them. Yeah, I mean, the more personal and more authentic it does seem to be, the more universal people
Yeah.
can relate.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think one of the things too that's, coming into clarity for me is the more technology is part of everybody's, daily lives, the more we're behind screens, and with AI coming on to the scene, it's going to be more and more of that. But what you can't duplicate, right, is this, you and I
Yeah.
sitting together talking, or, someone on stage telling the most gut-wrenching story of something that
Hmm.
happened to them in their lives, but how they came through it, right?
Yeah.
That heart to heart connection of, people coming together.
Hmm.
Technology cannot replicate that, right?
No,
And
no.
so, that's why I feel like, more than ever, I'm just super motivated, and I've been really reflecting on it, but also, making some big plans for 2025. So,
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, like, what do you see? Okay, so if 2024 was an 8 year, and it's
yeah.
funny because I have my notebook right here. I just want to look real
Uh-huh.
quick because the
Yeah.
first page of this notebook was from that session that you did where it was about the 8 year.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, and so it was like, how do I, and I remember you said, like, write down how
Was
you
that
want to
virtual? Yeah.
feel.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the virtual, Tammy did like a virtual 2024, and it was an 8 year.
Hmm.
um and it's funny, it's like this notebook I have right in my little hand, and it's the very first page. And it's very funny because I remember you saying, like, it's important to understand, how do I want to feel? Like, not thinking about the plans, not thinking about the outcomes, like, how do I want to feel? And I wrote down heart expanded, wide open, life force energy, pulsing, grounded, measured, flowing. And I gotta tell you, I feel all those things right now.
Hmm.
And it's so funny that you just, like, that you brought up that was an 8 year, like, that's how we started this year, talking about it being an 8 year.
Yeah.
Because, like, looking back at that now, I'm like, that those are the things that guided me this whole year. Those feeling words is what
Mhm.
pulled me through the whole year to all of my really deep yeses,
That's
and to
amazing.
know that they were deep yeses.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
I love this full circle moment.
I love the full circle moment. Yeah. And, as artists, which each one of us we are,
Uh-huh.
that self-doubt, that inner critic that, creeps in that process, right? That's also like what I kept coming back to. A
Hmm.
lot of what we've been talking about in terms of how it feels in the body, how do we want to feel moving through it? And, there were some dark days where I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
And mostly it was me saying, I don't know if for Spark, I can go up on that stage and tell this story, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, when you do 4 shows for that first opening run, you're like, oh, I can do this.
I guess I can tell that story.
Wow. And that feels amazing to just
Hmm.
get it out, right?
Yep. Yep. But then I'm curious, with the second run,
Hmm.
did the critic pipe up again and say, like, oh, you
Totally.
should change it, or oh, it needs to be different, even though the first
Totally.
run
Well,
was
it
so
was like,
successful?
oh, you were just lucky that time around,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was quote unquote beginner's luck,
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
funny. I have that feeling right now, like, being here in Indiana and thinking about, like, booking and how am I gonna, like, start booking again, and where am I gonna start booking? And I've had that exact same thought. I'm just like, oh my gosh, they might not like me here. Like, what do you mean? Like, people
Right.
are people.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But
Hmm.
you get that critic going, right? Like, I mean, I've played music now solidly for 10 years, right? Like, solidly for 10 years, like over 100 gigs a year, kind of like, I can do this. In my
Yeah.
mind, I know I can do this. And yet I still am like, they might not like the way I sound. They might not like the way I play guitar. They might not like me. They might not like,
Right.
It's so
I probably don't
ridiculous.
need another female solo artist, on a
Right.
Saturday night or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so, and then like, but
But
thank goodness you can look at it and be like, okay, critic,
yeah,
calm down.
yeah. So I wrote this down, and I'm going to share it with you. I just need to pull it up in a minute. Let me just see if I can get up here. Um, because this really helped me in those moments, and it's kind of been one of these guideposts that I'm taking into 2025.
Yes,
And
I want to hear it because I want to know what you're thinking for 2025 because I feel like
um,
I don't know what I'm thinking for 2025.
let me see if I can. I'm trying to get it up on my phone, which is not as easy as
Oh my gosh. Well, while you're pulling it up on your
sounds.
phone,
But yeah, take
I'm
us
gonna
through.
I'm gonna tell you another thing I wrote underneath my feeling words
Please.
because then you must have said like, what do you intend to be? So I wrote down, I intend to be brave, and when I am, I will feel. And then I had like heart expanded, wide open, life force, and then I had my words after that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so funny because that word brave, like that brave word, like kept coming up so much in the last 2 weeks of me being in Indiana. Like people were saying it, like I was feeling it. It was, I mean, it did feel
Hmm.
brave. It did feel brave, like
Yeah.
to make this, middle of the country move, and splash back down to some place that is familiar and yet still really unknown to me. I mean, I have not lived here for 25 years. I mean, I
Hmm.
lived in Washington before I moved to New York. So it has been more than a hot minute of not being here. So it's just so funny. I don't know. It's just to me, I'm like, I hadn't gone back and looked at this page. And then I'm looking at this page. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much of it like came through this year.
All right, I found it.
Great.
So this is, so we were talking about like, even though, we've done so much, right? To not necessarily prove, but it's like, yes, you can sing, right? People love to hear you. You've done it multiple times, right? And same thing, like I've done a lot of stuff in front of people and as an
Yes.
actor and building community and bringing people together, right? But we still have that, as we're going to the next level of what we're doing, how this inner critic and self-doubt like creeps in, right?
Yep.
So the world doesn't need more dimmed down versions of you so you fit in. It needs the real you, the one who burns bright.
Ah, yes.
And so I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm taking into 2025. And every time I sit down and I want to like work on what I'm working on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's just, remind yourself, just Tami, just remind yourself.
Yeah,
Because it really is that authenticity, right?
it is.
And I think what we're also bumping up against is the more that you work on yourself and become this more compassionate, more authentic person in the world, right? That also helps the collective in many ways, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think also what we're seeing is coming out of this 8 year and what we're going into, it's the cosmic forces, right? This is woo woo in the real world. So if you're listening to this, then you probably are like us and you know what the cosmic forces are.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, but it's really like this is the moment in our evolution where it's churning up all the shadows, all the stuff, all the old patterns, all the bad habits, all the things that keep us from shining, right? That are
Yeah.
making us dim our light. And that's one of the themes of Spark, which is, it's time now to like, and I have these 3 R's that I've been playing around with. The first thing you have to do is you have to release that shit, right? You've
Yeah.
got to like get it off you energetically, mentally, emotionally. And then you've got to step in and reclaim who you are. Remember who
Yes.
you are, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
reconnect with that deep, intimate soul and self that you are, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like, this is a moment in time where we're actually kind of living through that individually and collectively. so that we
Mm-hmm.
all can evolve more into this, unity consciousness. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens before any big breakthrough or any big acceleration or ascension, everything looks like crap,
That's
right?
right. That's
Dark
right.
night of the soul.
There has to be a big breakdown to have a breakthrough. I mean, that's what everyone says about why it's even so important to do something as trivial, you would think, as cleaning out your closet, right?
Mhm.
Because if you don't make space for new things to come in, it's not going to come in. I mean, it's the same thing for your emotional energy. If you're all cluttered up and junked
Mhm.
up from things you haven't released, nothing new can come in. But what I hear from people a lot is I get it conceptually, like, but how the hell do I release it? Like, I've
Mhm.
tried, I'm trying, how do I release? And we've talked about lots of different ways on this podcast. You know, one of my favorite ones that has worked for me, like time and time again, is that burning ritual on the new moon. I mean, I just had another one in November where I burned something and like I had like one of the most cosmic breakthroughs 7 days later to the day that I burned it, asking for help in forgiving
Mhm.
a situation that I was like, I cannot carry this forward into Indiana. I cannot, it has to stay, it has to end, and it has to, and I burned the thing and I buried it outside just the way we talked about. And 7 days later, I
Amazing.
got an apology that I never would have in a million years dreamed I would have gotten. That what makes it easier to help forgive someone when they apologize. Like
Right.
I asked for help. I was like, I need help. I don't know how. And that's what I said out loud. I do not even know how to begin forgiving this situation. And it was like the universe was like, okay, we'll help you. If you don't know how, you ask for help. And I said, help me figure out how.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
I
that right
love
there,
that
that is
ritual
a
that we
master
do.
class. That is a master class lesson right there.
Right? Like, but
Yeah.
we did that. Like, I learned that from this podcast, from us doing that on this podcast. I had never
Uh-huh.
burned on the new moon before. I had never like written something out and burned it, but I've done it a couple of times now. And each time, and I am not exaggerating, each
Mhm.
time I've done it, the thing that I burned and had a very clear intention about and asked for help with, I got the help I needed. I received exactly what I needed each time I did it. So like I think if people are looking for the like, but how? Like how do I release? They should go back and listen to some of the ritual episodes because we were dishing out a lot of really great rituals.
Mhm.
Um, and then for some people who might be a little more like cognitively leaning still, which is fine,
Mhm.
I just listened to a podcast, a Mel Robbins podcast with a neuroscientist. Um, I almost want to look it up real quick because he literally broke down the science behind how you retrain your brain, like
Mhm.
how to release something. I sent it to like three friends who had said to me, like, I'm having the hardest time and I just need, um, I don't
Yeah.
know what it was, but it was it was with a neuroscientist. Oh, here it is. Neuroscientist and expert. It's change your brain. Number one neuroscientist exercise protocol. Nope, that was peak energy. But anyway, you'll go on the Mel Robbins podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just like a couple months ago. And it
Mhm.
was a man and he's a neuroscientist and he gives very specific concrete things as well. So like there are so many resources out there, and that's one of the things that I love that we do is that we share them with people because like we find them and then we want to talk about them and then we want to share them because yeah, it's like we do want this for everybody else. We do want everybody to
Absolutely.
have those feeling words of expansion and heart open and um so you know
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like people have to find what works for them. But if
mhm,
you're stuck and you don't know where to turn or you don't even know what the options are, yeah, definitely start with woo woo in the real world. Because,
absolutely.
it's just a great way to kind of break the ice and get into finding something that could work, right? I mean, everything is energy and, this physical body that we have is a complicated machine. But I think once somebody takes it's more about, kind of observing and awareness, I think, right? So
Mhm.
once you're willing to kind of observe a feeling and be aware of that feeling and then sit with it, right? And just really not try to push it down, not try to push it away, or we're all so busy and distracted, I'll deal with it after I do the dishes. Oh, but then I've got to take the kids to soccer, or then whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
We can make a million excuses for why we just can't sit down with ourselves quietly and listen to our own heart and listen to
Yeah.
what our soul is trying to tell us, and more importantly, just how we're feeling, right?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
I think you nailed it on that one. I think because if you don't allow an emotion, and I've learned this the hard way. So speaking from
Oh,
experience
absolutely.
here.
Right here too, all the
Yeah.
time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you don't allow that emotion to process fully, and if you don't really like kind of dig into it and like kind of wallow in it for a minute at least, it's it's not it's not going to release. It's not going to have any way of transforming
Yep.
itself. And pain that is not transformed is transmitted. And so
Yes.
you're just going to keep transmitting it. You're just going to, that energy is going to hold on until you get in there and really transform it. And you can only do that by looking at it, by holding it up in the light and giving all the sunlight to look at it. And
Yeah.
just yeah, it's so very true.
And that is the moment. The beautiful thing I love about that, is that is the moment where it no longer has power over you.
Yeah. Yes. It does. It's like it gets the boogeyman out of the closet, you know? That's what it is. Like it's like
Uh-huh.
that. But and I mean it's funny because I have this notebook in my hand, and I know
Mhm.
for me also, like my morning pages has been when I'm really feeling stuck in an emotion, going to the page and allowing myself to just verbal, like just
Yeah.
spilling it all out
Mhm.
never fails me. It never ever fails me. Like always by about the page and a half, always takes about a page and a half till I get it. And then I'm just like, aha. Like I really start to put my finger on that's what's happening. That's what's going on.
Mhm.
That's why that triggered me, or that's why I'm feeling that way, or that's the emotion that I'm feeling that I didn't realize I was feeling. Um, and I don't know, it's weird. There's something about releasing it on the page for me too that does it. So there's some
Yeah.
more release ideas for people if they
Yeah. Yeah,
feel
for
stuck
sure.
there.
So this past season, we talked about, these moments in our lives that become, transformational, or even
Mm.
sometimes just educational, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think it dovetails so well with some of the things that you were just saying about releasing. Because when we come up against, whether it's a pattern that has been keeping us stuck or holding us back, or a friendship or a relationship or a job that we don't like, or kind of whatever it is, right? And maybe we're not dealing with it in a way that is productive, like you were just talking about,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes life will just smack you in the face and something will occur. And then you're sort of forced in this, what we
Yeah.
call spark moments, to
Yeah.
decide, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I really enjoyed, the conversations this past season with a lot of, women who were just so willing to tell their story, but also how they were able to like move through and transform really their own energy, which
Yeah.
ultimately became, um, a lesson in how to grow, how to evolve, how to have hope, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Right. And also for them to be brave enough to go on stage and share that with others so that people don't feel as alone in their own process and their own
Mhm.
experience. It's just so important for people, for them to be witnessed, but also for people to know that, like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
There is hope. I can make this different. I can change this energy, even when you're faced with the hardest of hard things that happen,
Mhm.
or you're faced with things you didn't want, or you're faced with things that you have to do, right? That you know that you do want, but it's hard to get to the other side to
Yeah.
get there. That
Yeah.
all those stories played out on that stage, and it's just
Yeah.
helpful for people to know like they're not alone. You're not alone
Mhm.
on this journey.
Yeah. I was thinking about too, we did, so going into 2024, we did that event together, how to cultivate joy. right? How to
Yeah.
embrace it and cultivate it. And that's what we went into 2024 with the intention of cultivating more joy, right? And
Hmm.
then we did, when we kicked off this new season, we did this amazing sound bath in our community. Again, just following through with cultivating joy, right? And
Hmm.
how do we do that? And kind of looking at, all the different seasons of this year for the podcast and the different
Yeah.
guests that we've had and the rituals that we had. So it was, in the beginning, just like tilling the soil of like what we want to cultivate, right? And then the rituals, right? And then
Mhm.
other people kind of coming in and saying, how do we embody that now that
Yeah.
we're bringing up and we're planting these seeds and we're bringing up what we want in our lives, but how do we really embody it?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then, rounding out the season with women who have gone through the fire and come out
Yep.
on the other side. It's just a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful arc there, I think.
It really
Lots
is.
of
And
golden nuggets.
so many. I mean, really so many in every episode. And I was looking before we hopped on here. This episode is our 33rd episode,
Oh,
which is like
that's a
a
master
very
angel number.
right. So I was like very taken with that. Our very first episode launched on 12/12/22,
Mhm. An auspicious day,
auspicious day. And
a
then
portal day.
we're aiming to get this one out on 12/12/24, right?
I hope so.
That's our hope. So
That's
we
our
hope
hope.
that we hope this launches on this one comes out on 12/12/24. And none of that was even planned like necessarily, but it all kind of just happened and fell on the right alignment, which
Yeah, so hold
um
on a second. Hold on. I'm going to grab a book. Hold on.
yes, grab a book. And do you have your deck, your tarot deck? Because that's the other thing, party people, as Tammy goes and grabs the book, like the moments we've had with the angel numbers, with the tarot cards, like, that came up exactly with
Yeah.
like what we were talking
It
about.
always just gives us these, uncanny confirmations or synchronicity around what we're
Yes.
doing. Okay, so
Yes.
this is my angel numbers book.
Oh gosh, yes.
And so
And who wrote that if people
33rd
wanted to get their
episode.
own?
The angel numbers book is by Mystic Michaela.
Ooh, all right.
So angel number 33. It's the number of love and peace. And it says, you are never alone. Your angels are with you, listening and receiving your prayers, but they want you to stretch a little further. What can you do to help yourself today? Reflect on a present problem and think of one way to make it slightly less difficult. No matter how small the action, it matters. And, again, I think it dovetails with what we were just talking about. You literally said the words, you are not
You are
alone.
not alone. Yeah.
And right as I glance up at at the top of the next column, which is number 34, says creative connection, you have a spark.
Come on.
It says that. Can you see it?
Yep. You have a spark right there. I'm telling you, like, ask and you shall receive, people.
Ask and
Ask
you shall
and you
receive.
shall receive.
That's right. Because we all have free will, right? So no
Hmm.
one's going to, dive in, including the angels or spirit guides or ancestors. It
Hmm.
just kind of goes on and on. But in terms of the help that definitely exists, and I should say the unseen help, right?
Yeah,
Um, but you have to ask.
you do. You have to ask. And it does help to ask it in writing. It helps to ask and say it out loud.
Yeah,
It does.
it
Oh
does.
my gosh. That's crazy. Like that's
Or as
just
Vasiliki,
absolutely.
or as Vasiliki says, power to the pen, like writing it down.
Mm-hmm.
Helps to amplify the energy, and speaking it out loud helps to amplify the energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always so powerful. All right, now I feel like
Gosh, we gotta pull a
we just got
card.
to keep going with some woo, with some bringing some woo in. Okay,
Whew.
so when you say stop, Becky,
Mm-hmm.
unless something flies out of the deck, which has been known to happen at times. But when you say stop, I will pull the card on top.
Great.
Well, hold
You
on.
want to fly?
Yeah.
All right, then that's it.
Again, it's a 3.
Oh, come
Yeah. So, wow. 3. Okay. 3 of fire in this card. This is the Angel Wisdom card deck that I work with every day. And this is what the imagery is on the card. And
Okay.
it's planning for the long term, abundance from past choices, pride in the success of your labors. Be patient as you decide what's next.
How perfect is
And
that?
this card is affiliated with Archangel Michael, who I also work with a lot. I mean, he's so powerful. It's amazing. Let me just
That
go.
is so perfect. The whole like be patient with what comes next, because I was just asking you, like, do you have big plans for 2025? Like, I feel like I have to be so patient with what's going to unfold in 25.
That's right.
Like I
And
have some
it's
things
like,
on the horizon, but it's like I don't really know how it's all going to get traction. But
exactly. And Mercury is retrograde now. So it's like, even though I'm really being very thoughtful about all of these things that I want to plan and have happen in 2025 as a way of building, right, from 2024, for
mhm,
the first time in my life, I am not rushing it. I'm not like, saying this has to happen by this date, right? And it's of course
mhm,
like we want to plan goals and we all have hopes and dreams, but this time around I'm like really relaxing into the unfolding of it. Let's just put it that way, right?
yeah,
Um,
amazing.
so this is the book. I just want to see very quickly. So 3 of fire. Okay, now comes the long-term planning. Your initial endeavors and any follow-up work you've done either have been extremely successful or will be. The moment to really think about the broader future is here, not just next week or next month. Where do you want to be a year from now, 3 years from now? The investments you've made so far, financial, creative, or energetic, will yield fruit. But it's
Mm,
time to think bigger than all the work you've done to date. As your ship comes in, where will you set sail for next? The next phase might take you some patience, but that's all right. You've got plenty of time. A thriving business, giving or receiving assurances of success, self-satisfaction with a job well done, seeking out a personally rewarding new endeavor, business travel. The wisdom of this card, as you head into the next phase, it's important to think things through very logically and with an eye for the details. As the Emperor, Archangel Michael can help you be as organized and methodical as possible. That's pretty powerful.
that is very powerful. That is, I mean, everything
Again,
that
in the
that was saying.
context of this conversation and what we've been talking about and sort of, bookending for 2024,
Mhm.
and launching into 2025, I think, we just get so many timely
We
messages.
really do.
I
We
mean, when you're
really, really do.
when you're tapped in, it's so amazing.
It just becomes more of like a conversation. I mean, honestly, like
That's right.
that the angel number 33 and the card were just in conversation with us. I mean, they just joined the conversation that we just had. And so I think that that is the best living proof, real-time example of how it really is when you are dialed in.
Yeah.
It just becomes a conversation. It doesn't even become a question. Was that a thing? Is this,
Hmm.
am I on the right track? You just know because you're like, oh yeah, I'm in conversation. I had a little doubt. Oh, there's my confirmation. We're having a
Yeah.
conversation. Yep, I'm still on it. Like
Yeah.
it's
Right.
flow. It's flow.
It is. It's
Wow.
just wild.
It's
So remember, I
fantastic.
said you're going to tell me when to stop, right? And then
Yeah.
unless the card flies out, and the 3 flew out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, let me just see what card is on top.
What right, what card is on top? I love this. Give us another. The high priestess. I'll take you, lady. I'll take you.
By the way, this was the second time I've drawn this card. Now obviously I was sitting here shuffling the entire time and that card flew out and then I was like, what's on top? This is also the card that I drew this morning. So after I do my morning meditation, I draw a card. And so the card is here again.
I just got goosebumps.
I mean, and meditate and turn inward to discover your soul's true desire. This is not a time for action. Develop your intuitive gifts and trust the wisdom you receive.
Again, in conversation. Okay, 25, 2020, 20, here we come. Here we come.
Here we go.
We're ready. We're ready. I feel more ready this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
Well,
more
I
ready.
think what's amazing is, I was talking to Dan over coffee about this morning, kind of a similar but different conversation. And I think it also goes back to how you mentioned this peace and calm. I think it's the more we do have daily practices and whatever that is for anybody, right? So a daily mindful practice. And I think that a lot comes along with that in this peace and calm and willing to wait and willing to, make stuff happen, but not from a place of because you think you should or because you think it's going to, result in something that is more along the lines of like what other people think of as success or, name it, right? It's when you're just more in touch with who you are and you're willing to let that person be out in the world, right? Goes back to that, like, what are you transmitting? What's like your frequency that you're transmitting? I think the more in tune you are with your own frequency, the easier it is to just like relax, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there won't be setbacks or challenges or any number of things, but it's just, it gives you, a different perspective, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree. The thing that the word that kept coming to my mind when you were saying all of that was that it's allowing, it's allowing things to happen, and it's allowing the great things to happen, and it's allowing the hard things to happen,
Yeah.
and allowing whatever comes with each one of those to happen to you, because that's how it all starts to transform. That's how you start to transform all that energy is, yeah, if there's a setback, there's something in that setback that's,
Right. That
there's
you need to learn.
that you need to learn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an allowing of like not fighting what is, not fighting reality, and just allowing. And there is a lot of peace in that. And again, it's not a com complacency of
That's right.
allowing. It's not that type of allowing, where we're complacent about injustice or complacent about things that need more attention, or but allowing your actions to be informed from
Yeah.
a greater source of input. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this season.
I know.
Where, it is just all about love, peace, and connection, but mostly with ourselves in order to show up as authentically as possible. And when we do that, magic happens.
It really does. It really does. Well, what an amazing year. What an amazing season.
What an amazing season.
What a time in life right now, everybody.
Yes. Yeah. So if anybody's still listening, thank you for
Yes.
for hanging out with us. And I thought maybe, and I just thought of this, it was not like premeditated, but I thought, why don't we leave off with a question that we've always asked all of our guests. We
Ooh.
also have asked it, to our live audiences during Spark. So think back to your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old self. What were you like? And spend a few minutes thinking about that, maybe taking a piece of paper and pen and writing a letter to your younger self, and let him or her know how proud you are, and then talk to her about what you want your life to be like and watch the magic happen.
Yes. Yes.
Powerful exercise.
It really is. And it's a great way to go into a new year. Yeah.
Well, Becky.
All right, Tami. Here we
Woo,
are.
sister.
All right.
We just don't know what's going to happen next, but we do know that this episode is ending right now. So
Yes. We're done with this episode. We're done with this season. We have no idea what's next because that's how we're living life right now.
that's right. That's how we roll.
That's right. But it has been an awesome, awesome year.
Yes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you out in the world.
Indeed. Bye, everybody.